Simone. I'm excited to be here with you today. Today is going to be an episode where we're going to go over a few research papers that explore lefty and righty brains again, really interestingly, but with a focus on a persistent phenomenon that has been found, which is that people on the right politically have a much easier time modeling how people on the left think than people on the left able to model people on the right.
That is so strange. That is so strange.
Yeah,
I grew up thinking, as someone on the left, that we were the empathetic ones, that we understood everyone better and we knew what everyone we needed. How can we get this so wrong?
Oh, it's not just that. We're going to go into other things. So, like, speaking of them not being empathetic, just to give a little thing away here. Yeah. So there were 4 studies with nearly 4,800 participants in the UK and the US to look at how much empathy each side had for their political opponents.
Yeah.
This was called Empathetic Conservatives and Moralizing Liberals. Political intergroup empathy varies by political ideology and is explained by moral judgment. So what it showed is that liberals have less empathy for conservatives than conservatives have of liberals.
This actually makes a lot of sense too, because I remember being on the left growing up, having empathy for the entire world, but still seeing conservatives as this inhuman boogeyman.
Yeah.
So that actually checks out. That's wild.
Conservatives do not dehumanize lefties, but lefties do dehumanize conservatives.
They do.
And this is seen in the data. Like, this study was like, surprisingly, conservatives showed more empathy for liberals than liberals showed of conservatives. This asymmetry was found across studies and was statistically reliable. Why is it surprising? Maybe it's surprising because of your own biases going into the study. And I love the way the study explained this away. It's like, well, this is actually justified because lefties believe conservatives want to kill them and conservatives don't think lefties want to kill them. And I was like, well, but conservatives don't want to kill them. So it's not, this is like saying the Nazis were justified because blood libel. They're like, yeah, well, they did think the Jews were murdering their babies. And it's like, yeah, but the Jews weren't murdering their babies. That doesn't make their ideology justified. What are you talking about? Now, I'd note here that there was a great study done on the nature of the dehumanization, which I think can help. So this was the study, Political Meta Dehumanization in Mental Representations, Divergent Emphasis in the Minds of Liberals versus Conservatives. And this study found that liberals and conservatives differed in how they dehumanize the other, at least in the framing of this study.
Okay.
So what this study found was that conservatives tend to view liberals as immature, while liberals see conservatives as savage, which is true. But one is like a pitying, like, if you had more information.
Yeah, you're just misinformed. You're not exposed to the world as it is.
I love how they're like, that's dehumanization. It's not dehumanization. That's just like actually the way it is. If I believe that if you actually empathize with someone and see them as human, you're going to think that the reason they hold these views is they just don't have access to as much information.
Yeah, that you must know something that they don't know, and then that's why you view what you view. Yes,
which is framed as
immaturity. I remember viewing conservatives as a leftist young lady.
No, and I remember, hey, I was a leftist at one point too, and I remember conservatives are the savages who live in the woods and are religious extremists and don't know anything.
Scary Bible thumping cultist monsters who don't care about other people at all and just want you to live like them. And
yeah, so I want to talk about like what creates this phenomenon.
Yeah,
and I should note the first study that I was mentioning that led to all of this. I heard one guy point out, this was Short Fight Otaku, say that in one study it was actually that lefties were 3x worse a rate of conservatives in terms of modeling them.
Oh my gosh,
find that exact study, so I don't know where exactly he was getting that from, but it seems believable given what I've seen. And we recently,
oh wait, no, this was What If Altist who said that. It's while we were driving.
Oh yeah, it was What If Altist who said that. Yeah, not Short Fight Otaku. And this was a great video by What If Altist, by the way. He's totally back. He's got some fun videos. The one that you missed that I thought was really good was on, and you should check it out, was on the anti-civilization, looking at how the steps kept producing people and groups that went out and destroyed all of this various civilizations of the world, whether it was the Chinese, whether it was the Europeans, whether it was the Indians. In this one region of the world, like in Civ, like a
Reavers,
just kept spawning the things that destroyed civilization. Yeah. Jeez. Wait, the Reapers, how do you know Mass Effect?
Well, in Serenity. There were
Oh, this is the
this is
okay.
different universe. Whatever.
But anyway, yes, very interesting. And we might do a different video on that idea, because I think it's really interesting, the idea of an anti-civilization. Although I'd go further and I'd say that their civilization is the anti-Jews. They are the exact antithesis of Jewish history, i.e.
Because they're well, if Jews represent order and process,
and living in urban centers,
these represent anarchy and distribution.
Yeah. And having a vested interest in maintaining a stable status quo, these individuals,
they are entropy
incarnate. They lived almost entirely outside of cities, almost entirely with the benefit of the status quo being destroyed. They're very, very interesting to go into, but that's for another episode. But anyway, so he pointed that out, and I don't think that Rubyard lies about stuff. He seems to know his stuff, so he got it from somewhere. But what I was getting from Short Fat Otaku was a really interesting instance of this that happened recently. Where an individual named Bunnis or Bunny or something, who was a trans game maker. So one of our friends, Stuttering Craig, who does Side Scrollers, which is a conservative leaning video game podcast, the #1 video game podcast, I think. He did this like just focused on like video game news. He put together a reward show called the Real Gamer Awards, and Bunless game Nightmare Cart ended up winning. People would pay to vote, and the idea was to build an award show without any of the political bias. They really wanted to do that. They wanted one that didn't have the lefty bias, it didn't have the righty bias. It was just like, these are games that we love. And this person, because they were so bad at modeling the modern right and what the modern right is striving for, did some
or just game enthusiasts voting based on merit.
Well, I mean, he is a genuine righty, but the genuine righties today are just fighting for a fair playing field for everyone. And they were unable to see this. So they reached out and they said, because the general righties don't have control of our culture right now. Our culture is controlled by the urban monoculture, which attempts to impose itself on everyone through media, through news, through leftist policy. And the right just wants everyone to be treated equally, regardless of your gender, sexuality, skin color, etc. You know, we've had reporters do double takes on us where I was like, yeah, I believe that someone should only be promoted based on meritocracy. But they were like, you sure you don't want to rephrase that? And I was like, no, famous racist who said, I believe that we should judge people on the content of their character, not the color of their skin. You know, that's who I agree with. But anyway, so this person, Bunnis, they ended up winning one of the categories. And of course, the people knew that they were trans. Nobody cared that they were trans. They had made a good game that didn't have a lot of politics in it. It was a racing game. It was called Nightmare Cart. And it was like a redo of like other racing games. So anyway, they won. This individual said, oh, I'm going to go have gay trans sex with my like great gay trans girlfriend, furry sex or whatever. And they expected the people running this to be like, I hate you. How could you do that? How could you? Oh, no, we screwed it up giving this to a trans. And they were like, no, cool. Like, do what you want. Like, we're just trying to, you know, award you for your work. And they then freaked out about this. And it was clear that they didn't understand the people who were hosting this award show at all, that the award show just wanted to genuinely help them and didn't care what their gender was. And so then they were like, I won't take the award, even though they had already accepted the award. And like, you didn't ask me for permission to give me this award. And this was, you know, and then a lot of people started hating them because they were basically being a jerk, right? And even in their own internal understanding of the story, even still, they believe that the people hosting the show were like upset or didn't know that they were trans, which just wasn't the case. They just don't care.
Yeah, they were voting on the game.
Yeah, they were voting on the game, right? And so we need to ask, why aren't they capable of seeing this? Like, why aren't they? And I think it's because the left has a big problem right now. If they admitted the political reality within which they find themselves, a core part of their narrative begins to dissolve in a way that makes it hard to continue to support the left. And this is why they're so bad at modeling the right, which is they genuinely believe that the right is a group fighting to culturally oppress them or imposition them. And they cannot see that the right just wants to be able to live life the way they want to live life, to just do what they want, to be able to work at jobs without being discriminated against, to be able to play video games without them having gone through some sort of council that makes them, obviously not produced by the best writers, obviously not produced by the best game makers, or they'd be good, and we know this, like video games used to be good before you guys took over, right? Like if you made games that were woke and good, as we have repeatedly seen, like, okay, you're like, oh, the right won't buy a game that's woke and good. What about Baldur's Gate 3? Like that was the wokest I've ever seen. And you could choose to play, a trans character who hadn't gone through gender reassignment yet. Like that was such a woke game. And I loved it. The rest of the right loved it. We talked positively about it on our shows. What we hate isn't trans individuals. It's trans individuals who make shitty games, who use our money from like previous games we supported before these individuals started ruining them to destroy the quality of something that we care about.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's, Acolyte or, Veilguard. And as you can look at our Wachowski effect with Veilguard, you can be like, well, these individuals were involved with the previous games. And it's like, yes, but after people become infected with the urban monocultural mind virus, they get really bad at everything, often. Not always, but often, particularly
always,
with like narrative storytelling. Is why was Nightmare Cart able to still be good? It's because I think you can be heavily infected with the urban monocultural mind virus and still be a good engineer or still be good at like non-narrative based games. You're just very bad at like creating narrative experiences often because you struggle to understand what people who aren't like you see in the world. And that's why games within that category are so rare.
I guess I could see that. Yeah.
So it's understanding, because if they could put their mind in somebody like Stuttering Craig, right, they would understand that what he wants is just the best games to win.
Yeah. He just likes games. Well, that's that. I mean, I was under the, I don't know him as well as you do. I was under the impression that he was only right insofar as Gamergate pushed a bunch of people to the right. And also anyone who actually cared about games became opposed to the urban monoculture, which was actively killing good games.
Well, yeah, and I think that this is something we're seeing across the board here with the modern right, which is that the urban monoculture created them by taking the things they care about and making them terrible. A lot of the left thought, and the urban monoculture thought, that if it could gain control of Star Wars, if it could gain control of the Assassin's Creed series, if it could gain control of these studios, that it would be able to use that control to finesse or sort of impose their cultural ideology on the people who are consuming that product. And that may have worked had they focused on also making those games good. But no, because gaining control of the studios also became affiliated with their sort of DEI, promote people based on their beliefs, not based on their beliefs or their race or their sexuality or their gender presentation, and not based on their competency. It was associated with bad products. And as the, what's he called again? The troll guy, we have a big overlap with him, Vree or whatever. He said, if they had only not come for our games, like we were happy. If you had just not with our games, we wouldn't have cared. And this is the way like all of nerd culture was. Like nerd culture used to be a solidly lefty thing.
100%.
And now nerd culture is solidly right wing, pretty much across the board, except for the people who still control like the conventions and stuff, because these are the large bureaucratic orgs. And
it really was the gaming that did it too.
It really was the gaming. Like, did you not? With gaming. But
yeah, the more I think about it, it's wild.
It wasn't just gaming. It was the Star Wars nerds. It was the Star Trek nerds. It was the, everybody who liked this stuff for its quality and who like had a genuine attachment to it feels genuinely betrayed.
That's so bad. That's so bad. Oh my gosh.
But what are your thoughts? I mean, do you have a different take on why the left can't model the right?
I think that a lot of it comes down to isolation, that for whatever reason, and you see this in graphs of friendship, that people and especially women who are left-leaning, are actively uncomfortable with having friends who are on the right, and they
Mm.
actively shun friends who are on the right. And when you look at the same rates of exchange, people who report on surveys as being conservative also report as having a few progressive friends. So for some reason, there's this selective cultural isolationism whereby a lot of conservatives are perfectly happy to be friends with progressive people, which would give them more ability to model them. The more time you spend around someone, the more you're able to model them, right?
Mhm.
And there's just a lot less willingness on the part of progressives to be friends with conservative. Now, the question would be, when you look at these graphs, well, how is it that you have conservatives who are friends with progressives and progressives who have no friends who are conservatives? I think that maybe there are just some progressives who are friends with lots of conservatives and they're unusual. But I think what's more likely is there's a lot of conservatives that just hide the fact that they're conservatives and are therefore friends with.
Well, this is like a known thing. Like
Yeah.
well, until I got famous, I had lots of friends who didn't know I had conservative views, even
Yeah.
after my views had started to
And
grow.
well, we know plenty of people who are like, yeah, I totally agree with you, but I would never say that in public. So I guess that's what's going on, is that there are a lot of sneaky conservatives or closet conservatives that are able to model progressives really well because they're friends with a bunch of them, and progressives just can't
And this
hear
is a
that.
fascinating point when we talk about cultural imposition being the hallmark of modern progressivism, is the very fact that people need to be closeted shows which direction the cultural pressure is going. In the same way you needed to be like a closeted gay in the 90s or something like that, you knew you would face cultural repercussions for, and today you knew you would face cultural repercussions if you wanted a game show that was completely meritocratic, and so you hide that. I see this was the message thread was my class. People fucking crazy. Like they're like, oh, all these Nazis and everything like that. And I'm like not even replying, right? Because I'm like, I seem to remember you guys like marching through the street, starting from the river to the sea. Like you guys actually supporting the people who want to exterminate the Jews. And this isn't like a fringe thing. This is like Claudia Gay, the woman who literally ran
Claudine
Harvard.
Gay.
Claudine Gay, the number one like educational institution, being like, well, we shouldn't punish people for saying stuff about Jews. Like, obviously, this is a dehumanization of the Jews on the left. This is a breaking society into an ethnic hierarchy within the mainstream of the left. And the people who are fighting against this genuinely want a meritocratic society,
Yeah.
i.e., what Martin Luther King was fighting for. And I think that the left still tells itself that that's what it's doing. Like that it's unable to see that its actions no longer do that. And therefore the people who actually wanted that but are free of it oppose them. And I think that this also comes down to a question that I have had for a long time, which is why is it that the right and right-leaning influencers seem more prone to audience capture than left-leaning influencers?
Ah.
So
Interesting.
if you're not familiar with audience capture, this is where an individual may start as a centrist and then become more and more in line with whichever political direction they were leaning, because they end up developing an audience that is more extreme than them was in that political direction.
Right.
And this happens much faster towards the right, influencers who are centrist moving towards the right, than influencers who are centrist moving towards the left. And I think that the reason for this is actually due to the false narrative of their opponent that the left relies on to maintain its followers or its supporters, which is to say that once you begin to challenge the narrative that is normal and allowed within society, and you see that they have been lying to you, it is much harder to go back. Whereas if you start as a centrist and you begin to challenge things in a left-leaning direction, you are not going to see as many, oh, here's all of the places the right lied to me about this. Because the right is honestly right now, because it's not the right of the past. It's not like a religious right. Like
Yeah.
when you see people go, for example, anti-trans, they're not doing that for like religious reasons anymore. The main activists, whether it's like J.K. Rowling or Elon or whatever, right?
Mhm.
It's because they gained access to more information. And you also see a pattern of when people entertain the right, specifically influencers or right-leaning ideas, they are pushed further right by anyone on the left. And Joe Rogan is a great example of this. You know,
Oh,
after the
yeah.
election cycle, the left was like, we need a lefty
We
Joe
need a
Rogan.
Joe Rogan of the left.
Joe Rogan was Joe Rogan of the left. You
Yeah.
guys made him right-wing by attacking him whenever he talked to somebody on the other side.
Yeah.
And the question here, is this going to happen to Gavin Newsom? He's going to talk to some right-wing individuals and he's eventually going to be like, wait a second. Were they right all along? Like, I didn't.
Well, he's definitely getting points for hosting a podcast in which he has active, deep conversations with people who are on the right.
And if anyone knows how to contact him, let us know, because I would love to chat with him.
But I think that's one reason why he is winning over so much respect from the right. Like, oh my gosh, this progressive mainstay, this staple is actually listening to us. This is insane.
But
because conservatives are never listened to. I don't think so. Because he is playing a very, very, very long game, and he is the slickest of slick political operators, and he's going for president. And he's not going to leave his party, and he knows what he cares about more than the truth is winning. And he wants to win as a Democratic candidate in the next presidential election.
I will say that this is like an interesting phenomenon as well, that when lefts learn to empathize with the right, they often become the right. So there's like the case of the people who went to make like the red pill community documentary and seemed pretty hostile to it at first, and then they learned about it and became like pro red pill. Like, there's like a group of women too. For the woman who decided she would try to be a guy just to show how easy guys have it.
Oh yeah.
Men have it much harder and ended up, unaliving her. Is Isekai herself.
Yes.
Yeah. This is an interesting, and it's a phenomenon people have when they're talking to us, like lefties have when they're talking to us in like the pronatalist stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If they come to us, they expect to think that we are absolute demons, and then they're like, why are you being so reasonable? Is this a trick? Where is the trick? We just did an interview with Mother Jones. We'll see how that goes. But they were very much like, yeah, it seems reasonable, the positions you guys are pushing. And I think that this is the challenge. It's that the lack of empathy is sort of core to staying on the left. And it's also core to like even the old version of the left. I remember I thought of righteous as being just completely illogical and animal-like. Like savages. They were like literally like a different species. I was like,
like ending up on an island full of cannibals. You'd be very scared.
Yeah, lefties will be like, I have empathy for everyone.
Horrible.
And you're like, well, what about the like working
me?
poor in America, like the right, the factory workers, the coal miners? They're like, well,
there's so much distaste.
Everyone, you know what I mean by everyone.
I don't know. I think it's a major blind spot. It's a blind spot. Like maybe part of it too is that they're seen as not counting because they're seen as coming from a position of privilege and cumulative wealth, even if they're not wealthy, like even if they're the disenfranchised Appalachian poor described in J.D. Vance's Hillbilly Elegy, they're seen as still being
from I think they say this, but
because they are not black, because they are white.
They know this isn't true. I think the lefties, like internally,
I don't think so.
No, they know that there are poor, disenfranchised white people out there, but they do not see them as human. When they think of the people who are opposing them, they break them into two classes. One, a group of white, wealthy elites who keep them down, and then the subhuman troglodytes who work in the mines, who work on the farms, this other group, they understand this other group doesn't have power. They're just beneath caring about or relevant.
Or maybe it's that they are expected to have views that are so repugnant, lifestyles and views that are so repugnant to the educated elites that they see them as subhuman, but not deserving subhuman. Like, you grew up in America, you should have had the good sense to be progressive and educated and to live like me, and you don't. Therefore,
it's like you should have had the good sense to be born to a rich family like me. How did this not happen to you?
But like the thing is, like there are people in other countries who live lives of poverty and have cultures that ultimately are repugnant to progressive leftists, and yet the poor, morally repugnant white people in America are seen as irredeemable, I think, because they should have known better or something. That they're us. They how dare they have those views? Like those people who practice genital mutilation. Well, I may not agree with that, but once we give them our culture and our assistance, they will become enlightened and know better.
Oh, okay. So
You see
what
what I
you're
mean?
arguing is they see them kind of like apostates.
Yeah, I think they see them like apostates. If I'm modeling my old way of viewing things, I think that
It's
that's
like they should have enough money.
they had a chance to be a civilized, good person and progressive, and they chose not to be. Therefore, they are fallen. We do not need to protect them. They don't count. And we view them as less than human because they had a chance. They could have been baptized. They could have been saved.
And we're okay with supporting, the Gays for Gaza stuff. We're okay with supporting these people who throw gay people from
Because
roofs
once
and beat
we
their kids to death.
help them and save them, they will see the light, and they will be
And
just
we'll
like
be able
us.
to erase their cultural practices.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the plan. That is 100% the plan.
What would happen to a gay couple in Gaza?
Executed according to Islamic law. Islam doesn't endorse gayism. Islam doesn't endorse homosexuality. Just like Canada doesn't endorse a lot of things.
So would you like to see Sharia law in Canada replace Canadian law?
At some point it will. Because we have families, we are making babies. You're not.
And they don't believe that the plan isn't working. Like fundamentally, there is a disbelief that the plan may not be working within any
No.
disenfranchised group.
The plan will work.
This is why you can take them like directly to like one of these individuals in the US and they'll be like, yeah, we plan to kill the gays. And they're like,
we need to give you more assistance. Because
know?
when a lot of this is like the USAID thing. Like when we give you more assistance, you will see that our ways are better. And I think this happened a lot in Europe too, that like, don't worry, once they experience our European social services and see our enlightened European systems, they will drop these savage views and they will be just like us. They will assimilate by choice, but we will never obligate them to assimilate because that is not our culture. And then I think...
But they're cultural nationalists for the urban monoculture.
Right. But they do that through the provision of services. The proselytization is by wealth distribution. We do not expend our energy attempting to change your mind because that is wrong. We accept all. Rather, we will take someone else's money and spend it on you, and then you will love us so much for doing so that you will be just like us.
Yeah, and well, or your culture will naturally evolve in this direction when you gain access to our information or more information.
Yeah, your kids will go to our schools. Your kids will become like us.
Well, and I think that this is also what we see so I was reading some posts on Ask Liberals, right? And it was somebody saying, hey, so like, here's the data showing that liberals have lower amounts of mental health than conservatives. Here's the amount, the polls showing, liberals have, et cetera, right? And anyone who looks at liberals can tell they have way more mental health problems than conservatives. This is just like a really obvious thing. And what people said was, oh, this is actually just an artifact of conservatives being liars. That's why liberals are more open and honest with themselves, and that's why it appears they have more mental health problems. And I think that this is broadly what we see. Like conservatives are all liars. Conservatives aren't honest about themselves, even though like any rational person can look at the two communities and be like, "You guys aren't mentally healthy." Though. Like you see that. Like I always note that the Natalist Convention. One of the interesting things about it is everyone there seems to be happy to be alive and excited about the future.
Yeah,
and it's rare for me to be around a community like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even if they don't have, everything in the world, they're happy with what they do have, and that's key. And so unusual, but delightful.
Well, Simone, any closing thoughts from you?
This has just been somewhat mind-blowing for me because even though it's been a long time since I've had that progressive cult mind space, it's still, I can still go back to it. And it's kind of shocking to realize that I wasn't this enlightened, empathetic person that I thought I was. And I still sometimes have this feeling like, well, I'm the evil conservative now. Haha. Like, I don't care about people. And then I actually realized that the reason I switched over to this is I actually do. I do care about people, and I care about evidence-based solutions and outcomes, and I can't do that and also still be on the left. And there were
Yeah.
many instances in my life in which I had to encounter that in environmental advocacy, and then in policy, and then in pronatalism. It just keeps coming back. So it's just crazy because I still am kind of brainwashed a little bit in the cult to believe. But of course,
This makes me evil to want to,
yeah, I'm the one who's not empathetic. I'm the one who can't model other people. I'm the tone deaf one. And to realize just how not true that is
Yeah.
it's not the satisfying thing I hoped it would be. I'm just like, well, what do they have, Malcolm? What do they have? They don't have good empathy. They can't model the other side well. They don't have really great evidence-based solutions. Their mental health sucks. They just lost. Come on, they need
I
something.
think this is why they can't. When everyone's like the left is lost right now, I think it's like nobody knows. Like the leftists are all internally talking. They know something is wrong. They're trying to fix it, and the reason why they're struggling so much is it requires seeing that they are the cultural imperialists. That they want everyone to follow their way of life, their cultural practices, whether it's the immigrants or the conservatives or anyone else. And their entire party is built around enforcing that.
And the thing is, I feel as though if they actually owned that,
yeah,
it would go better because, for example, they would require assimilation from immigrant groups,
Mhm.
or only let in immigrants who were willing to assimilate, which would go better.
It would go better than the Hispanics coming here
You-
and then voting more than 50% for Trump, the male ones at least, and the females. It was
Well,
like
yeah, but I mean, I feel like they're qualified to say that because, like Mike Solana has said, would a minimum requirement for coming here should be that you like America and you want to be an American.
the
that's the
point
Trump
here
view.
being is that these Hispanic immigrants came here and the left just assumed that they would be converted to the urban monoculture, and they haven't been.
Yeah.
Which is a serious miscalculation. And they have adjusted on that. They've become incredibly anti-Hispanic. They've become incredibly racist against Hispanic people. You see them talking about it all the time. They're like, oh yeah, let's get rid of them all now because they didn't follow what I wanted, But anyway, hey, Simone, what are we doing for dinner tonight? Curry again?
So, curry night number 2, and I will not burn your naan tonight. I apologize.
Would you put in a little bit of chili oil and a little bit of the chili flakes?
The red ones?
Yeah, the little red chili flakes. Or if we have any chilies that we haven't used yet, put them in. I don't know if you roasted some that we haven't used.
Roasted?
Well,
No, I haven't roasted. Yeah, those, if they're still good, because we were out of town for a little bit. You think they're still good?
I would imagine so.
Okay, yeah, I can just chop them up fresh and then simmer them.
Nicer.
Okay, then I will do that. How about that instead of the chili oil and flakes? Because those are pretty
No,
strong.
that plus chili oil.
You really want to hurt tonight, don't you?
Chili oil isn't spicy.
Okay. I wouldn't know.
Or not particularly. It's incredibly mild, actually. It just sort of adds to the...
To the what, if not?
I don't know,
Okay.
The thing.
That quelque chose, that je ne sais quoi, that pizzazz. I will make sure you have it.
Well, I'm gonna go hang out with. Are we gonna do NPR soon? We got the BBC, we got Ireland, we got a lot of news coming up in the near future. So, for those of you who still read the mainstream media, they're gonna be freaking out about us for a while, which I'm excited about. I love throwing shit at the fan because I'm in their house and I just watch it splatter on everything. They're all covered in it. It's hilarious.
I love you. I love you.
You don't have to. I mean, you're fine.
I don't have to, but I do.
I love you, but too, by the way. You're an amazing mom and wife, and I am extremely lucky for this life that I live.
I feel the same way. Nana. So does Indy. She's ready. She's ready. All right. I will see you downstairs shortly. Bye.
You bopped him with the soccer bopper. Toasty, you gotta get him back?
Now I'm even stronger.
Oh yeah? Oh, Toasty, you gotta power up, power up. Whoa. You gotta boost your power. Bam, bam, bam.